Now at 5, with a few hours left before polls close, we're breaking down the biggest races in the Minnesota and Wisconsin primaries.
Plus, what to know before heading to the polls to make sure your vote counts.
More Minnesota cities move to end their contracts with the company behind controversial license plate readers.
The Minnesota Supreme Court delivers a win for rental advocates in St. Paul, sending a right to repair proposal to voters.
And huge news from training camp as the Vikings name their starting QB. The news starts now. Thanks for joining us at 5, both on air and streaming. I'm Lauren Lemanchek.
And I'm Kevin Holmes. We'll have all those stories in just a moment, but we start with breaking news out of northern Minnesota, where we've learned a firefighter has died while fighting the wildfires in the Boundary Waters.
Morgan Wolf's here now, leading us off from the live desk. Morgan, what have you learned?
Yeah, just some really sad news. Just within the last 20 minutes, I confirmed with sources that a firefighter died this morning in Ely. We were told that there was some sort of medical emergency around 10:40 in the morning in the vicinity of Ely. An official say the firefighter was taken to the hospital, but shortly after arriving, they passed away. I asked what agency that firefighter was a part of, but right now that information is not being released as they are still notifying the family. Fire officials say that this is the 8th firefighter to die this year while fighting wildfires in the country. The fires in the Boundary Waters have burned more than 65,000 acres, and there are currently 750 firefighters and fire officials up there trying to put them out.
And the work is far from over. Morgan, thank you.
Well, now to our other big story. Right now, there are less than 3 hours left to vote in the primary elections in both Minnesota and Wisconsin, with so much at stake. So if you haven't cast your ballot yet, there is still time.
And as we speak, voters are deciding which candidates will appear on the ballots come the November midterms, and there's a lot of attention on several races in both states.
We have extensive live team coverage tonight of the biggest battles on the state and the national levels. We begin tonight with Raya Katene watching the gubernatorial race here in Minnesota. Raya.
Yeah, it is still very quiet here at the watch party for U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is almost certainly expected to become the Democratic nominee for Minnesota governor. It is still very early in the day, but we are expecting to hear from Klobuchar here tonight at 8 o'clock once the polls do close. But the bigger question that we're watching is who will become the Republican nominee for Minnesota governor. The candidates are House Speaker Lisa Demuth, businessman Kendall Qualls, and MyPillow founder Mike Lindell. The three do have some differences in their approaches to key conservative issues, but they all say they want to focus on combating the fraud in the state and making Minnesota more affordable by lowering taxes. Demuth currently has the most funding behind her, but Qualls is endorsed by the Minnesota GOP, while Lindell has the endorsement of President Trump. And according to political science professors I talked to, that endorsement from the president can carry Lindell a long way.
But at the same time, we've seen in the last week or so efforts even within the Republican Party to go after him, because I think their concern is that if he were to get the nomination, he's not going to help the Republicans break that 20-year losing streak in terms of winning statewide office.
Now, the last Republican governor of Minnesota was Tim Pawlenty, who served from 2003 to 2011. And as we just heard Professor Schultz say, who wins that primary for the Republicans tonight will give us some insight into whether Republicans will be able to break that losing streak come the fall. Back to you.
It is going to be very interesting to watch those results roll in. Raya, thank you.
Minnesota also in the spotlight on the national level in the race for U.S. Senate, and it's been a contentious battle on the Democratic side as Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan faces off against Representative Angie Craig. Danny Spiewak joins us live with more on that race. Danny.
Yeah, Kevin, this race in the U.S. Senate on the DFL side is really seen as another national test of how far Democrats are willing to go in backing progressive candidates. Will they back a progressive candidate like Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan for U.S. Senate, or will they go with Congresswoman Angie Craig, who has called herself the more electable candidate in this race? There's a lot of tendency with what we've seen in New York State and Michigan with progressive candidates winning in some of these primaries to try to compare it to Minnesota, but it's a very unique situation here in Minnesota with the dynamics you have on the ground. For Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, there is a vulnerability on the issue of fraud. She's had to answer to that on the campaign trail many times in recent months, what happened with the fraud crisis under Governor Walz and herself over the last 8 years. And for Congresswoman Angie Craig, her vulnerability with DFL primary voters is really around an immigration bill that she supported that was pushed by President Trump, the Laken Riley Act, in early 2025, that she voted for and now says she regrets. Those are kind of the two wedge issues that may, in some ways, define the outcome of the race tonight. We got a chance to ask about those topics with both candidates in interviews they did for our political show, KARE 11 on the Record.
The governor has said he wished that more had been done to tackle fraud. More should have been done sooner, and I agree. But I'm also encouraged by the governor and the legislature, moving really important policies.
The honest answer is that I wouldn't vote today for a single bill that gave Donald Trump and Kristi Noem's ICE any additional authority.
Now, there's another twist in this race because Lieutenant Governor Flanagan is officially endorsed by the Minnesota DFL party after winning the endorsement from delegates at the party convention in May. Congresswoman Angie Craig, at the very end, decided not to seek that endorsement. But in the Democratic Party, an endorsed candidate hasn't always won in these major races, so it'll be up to the voters. And there's a lot of other interesting stuff going on the Republican side of this U.S. Senate race. My colleague Jennifer Hoff carries it from there. Jennifer.
Danny, we're at the state's GOP headquarters in Edina, and you mentioned the word twist, and there are certainly some of those in this race as well. Really, the top one being that if former NFL sideline reporter Michelle Tafoya in fact wins tonight, it would be the first time that the state's party-endorsed candidate does not win, and that person is Adam Schwarzy. He was endorsed several months ago by the state's GOP. Born in St. Paul, he has extensive military history and strongly believes in smaller government with fewer taxes. But he's had so few polling points that he didn't even qualify to attend the Farm Fest Candidate Forum earlier this month. Instead, Tafoya is now already ahead by at least 30 points, according to U of M political analyst Larry Jacobs. She has such strong name recognition. She has plenty of cash. She's also running really as what they're calling a DC outsider. And Jacobs says a lot of these Republican candidates, including Tafoya, are also quite squirmish. They would prefer to not have the endorsement of President Trump, which is really a huge shift from just a few years ago.
He is a downer in politics today. His approval rating is at an all-time low. And we're seeing in polls that he's doing damage to many Republican candidates around the country, particularly in more competitive states or districts.
Now, one wrinkle in all of this tonight as we wait for those polls to close is that as of late last week, as many as a third of undecided Republican voters, in fact, it was about 37% of them, are just that, undecided, which is quite a high number. In primaries past, it usually sits around a fifth. So that could very well change, perhaps, who we see win tonight, and something we'll continue to follow from the GOP headquarters here in Edina.
A significant number indeed. Our thanks to Danny and to you, Jennifer.
Well, across the border in Wisconsin, the race for governor is the biggest one in that state tonight. It's being closely watched around the country as well. There's a crowded field there. 6 candidates still in the race, all vying for a chance to replace Governor Tony Evers, who is not seeking a third term. Heidi Wigdahl's here continuing our team coverage tonight. Heidi?
Yeah, Lauren, there are actually 7 Democrats on the ballot, but 3 of them dropped out before today. Meanwhile, there are 2 Republicans on the ballot. Political experts are closely watching what happens here to see which way the Democratic Party could be going headed into the midterms. In Wisconsin, the governor's race is one to watch.
I've been worried about it, of course, ever since Evers said he wasn't going to run again.
U.S. Representative Tom Tiffany has President Trump's endorsement and is the presumptive Republican nominee. But on the Democratic side, there are 4 still in the primary race: David Crowley, Francesca Hong, Kelda Royce, and Joel Brennan.
The race has been kind of crazy because it started out with several more players, and we had one person leave and then come back in.
Neil Krause, a political science professor at the University of Wisconsin-River Falls, says 2 are getting the most attention. Madison State Rep Francesca Hong, a Democratic socialist, is leading in recent polls, including one from the nonpartisan nonprofit State Navigate with a 22-point lead over Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. This comes despite Governor Tony Evers throwing his support behind Crowley.
Hong has identified herself as a Democratic socialist, but really if you look at her positions, they're incredibly popular. She's calling for like a 1-year moratorium on data centers in the state. She's calling for Medicare for all. You know, things like this poll very, very well.
I find it very intriguing that Han is doing so well, but it makes sense with the under 30 group.
Kenneth Thatcher voted early.
I couldn't wait. I was impatient.
And while the race is getting national attention,
some voters think it could receive more.
I think most people just kind of lurk in the weeds until after the primaries, and then they're like, okay, it's time to get galvanized. So that's what I'm hoping is going to happen.
Tiffany has already gone after Hong. Kraus says if Hong does win the primary, he thinks there's going to be a massive campaign, not just from Tiffany, but a lot of tech firms as well to defeat her.
And is that because of the data center issue, Heidi?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Of course, there are many more races on the primary ballot tonight. They include congressional races, state House and Senate seats, county attorneys, and other nonpartisan local elected offices. The races you can vote for will vary based on where you live. And keep in mind, some races are on the back of your ballot. If you still need to vote tonight, a few reminders before you head out. You can register at the polls in both Minnesota and Wisconsin if you're not already. If you don't know where to vote, each state has a poll finder online. You'll just need to put in your address. When you get there, you'll receive a ballot with both Republican and Democratic candidates on it, but you can only vote for candidates in one of those columns for your vote to count. We have everything you need to know on KARE11.com/vote. The polls remain open until 8. And be sure to join us as the results come in, along with analysis from political experts throughout the night. Our streaming coverage begins at 8 tonight on our apps, and join us again for KARE 11 News at 10.
Some huge news out of Vikings training camp right now. Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback. He won the battle over J.J. McCarthy. Will Hall heard from the team this afternoon and joins us live now with more on this major decision we've all been waiting for, Will.
Yeah, Lauren, Kyler Murray officially QB1 here in Eagan. He'll be the fourth different starting quarterback to start the season for the Vikings in the last 4 years. Now, the team just wrapped up practice not too long ago. Kyler had a really sharp practice this afternoon. Now, earlier today, we were able to speak with Kevin O'Connell. He said this was a tough call, especially because of what both Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy put into this, as he called it, a, quote, true competition, end quote. Here's KOC expanding on what excites him about Kyler operating this offense.
You know, there's moments in time where there's comfort from Kyler in the scheme. He had some really high completion days where, you know, he was able to show some really good understanding of just putting the ball in play, playing with great timing, rhythm. You know, you guys have seen him be explosive when there's opportunities there, but you've also seen him check the ball down and put the ball in play and get us from a 1st and 10 to a 2nd and 3. And then, you know, as you continue to look at the body of work through those 10 days, you know, what jumped out is what could be.
Now, Kevin O'Connell reiterated that J.J. McCarthy is, quote, absolutely a part of the long-term vision for this franchise, end quote. Now, he added that both quarterbacks, Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy, will play on Saturday in the team's preseason opener at the Giants. We just wrapped up practice, sprinted over here after talking with Kyler Murray. We'll bring that to you coming up at the top of the hour. Guys?
A lot of people would argue it was his to lose in the first place.
I think so, and they brought him in. That was kind of the conclusion a lot of folks have, but it'll be really interesting to hear from him, so we'll look forward to that. Thank you, Will. Well, still ahead here at 5, a major win for rental advocates in St. Paul, sending a right to repair proposal to voters.
Plus, more Minnesota cities end their contracts with Flock, the company behind controversial license plate cameras. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first, let's check in with Chief Meteorologist John Ziegler.
Yeah, it's quiet, it's hot, the humidity's creeping up just a little bit here, and that's getting our feels like to 90. We're back to 90 degrees for the heat index. It's not crazy hot, but again, it's definitely warming up. So with higher moisture, you can expect a warmer evening. Winds are light. You're going to be out there late evening. It's going to be great. Shorts and t-shirt weather at the patio or on the deck. Lows should get down into the middle to upper 60s around the Metro South, upper 50s. Pretty quiet. Storms are going to be all around us once again. When will it ever rain? I'll let you know the best chance on that 7-day coming up.